Josh Riddett from Fidelity. Please give my hand. Thanks.
Okay, is the mic on? Yeah, got me? Awesome, cool. Okay, so welcome on in, guys. My name's Josh Riddett. I own a company called Easy Crypto Hunter. We're one of the largest GPU mining providers in the UK. And we're here to kind of bust a lot of myths. We're here to kind of spend a bit of time with you now, making you rethink about what you may or may not have heard of the crypto sector. A lot of you in this room are going to be slightly more educated than the majority of the people that we speak to. So a lot of, some of this stuff, the beginning, of course, is the basics that I'm sure you're familiar with, but the meat of what we're going to get through is the really exciting stuff that's coming at the end, to all the numbers, all the metrics, and how we've been able to earn a really, really nice return for all our clients in the UK, mining in 2018 in the bear market, paying UK electric rates. It's not that difficult, but you just need to know exactly a couple of things that people don't always understand and know. So, what the heck have we got for you in the next kind of little bit of time? So fundamentally, we're going to go through some blockchain fundamentals and crypto, where we're going, mining misconceptions, which is kind of where we're going to get to, and also how to mine profitably in the UK, which is kind of the crux of what we're going to go get through, and what you're all kind of here to be able to see. So just a little kind of overview and a history of where we can. We kind of got founded in 2017, fundamentally because I had a passion for crypto, and there was so much noise in the space and it was really confusing, and I just thought this is an amazing space, as everyone in this room is. I'm super passionate about crypto, and I just wanted to get average people involved, because who wouldn't want to do that? But it was a bit complex and a bit difficult, and it didn't make a lot of sense, and algorithms and coding and languages and block times are all a bit too much for the average person. So I wanted to change the way that we did things. So previously, until we came along, if you wanted any type of mining equipment, you'd cross your fingers ordering something from another country that would turn up, and then you'd have to figure out how to work it. We wanted to do things a bit differently. We're actually based in Manchester, which is nice, save us traveling around the country like we always do. We're actually based in Bury. We have full offices, a full team, full staff. We're expanding very quickly, and we've grown from zero now to a multi-million-pound firm in the last 18 months. We've grown very quickly, and we now offer a full service provision. So this is kind of what we do. We specialize in GPU mining equipment primarily. We're going to get into that later. We do a lot of consultancy work with firms that are in the cryptos or not in the crypto space that want to move into there. So maybe putting their products on the blockchain, or helping them just something as simple as accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment. Accountancy, as a consequence of all our clients making lots of money this year, people have asked us how accountancy works in the UK, so we're proud to offer one of the UK's full service specialist cryptocurrency accountancy firms, which is really nice to be able to offer for domestic and business customers. And we do a lot of commercial and B2B training as well, a lot of seminars, presentation, education, online workshops and that type of stuff, helping people in the space as good as we can. So this is the kind of stuff which I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with, what is blockchain and crypto, and we'll kind of whiz through this a bit quicker than I normally would because it's very straightforward. But fundamentally, a lot of people, what we actually find, which is quite unusual, is a lot of people in the space don't really understand mining that well because their knowledge of blockchain can be from this type of angle versus actually understanding it at the ground level in regards to how it works, because we get it all the time. We get a lot of developers that are very good at coding, or we get a lot of people that are putting projects together in the proof of stake space. And mining is obviously something that's core to the entire underpinning infrastructure of crypto, but something that isn't that well understood. So of course we've got the current and data financial system. So the way we explain this to people is simply a case of, at the moment this is the kind of system that we have a centralized system. So as you can see in the image above, they kind of represent different banking institutions. They all have centralized systems. And of course we know that centralized data centers look a little bit something like that. So, Santander has a big server somewhere where all its kind of stuff's kept, and that internalizes its own ledger, and as we know, it's a bit of a pain in the ass having to move things between us. So of course the blockchain offers this decentralized system where the ledgers are updated publicly, and that offers some really, really nice incentives, as I'm sure we're all aware. So we kind of explain it quite simply to people. We say, look, it's a little bit like a Google spreadsheet where everyone can see the changes that are being made and everything's kind of there and the ledger gets updated. Try to kind of use language that people are familiar with. And this is a kind of overview of the differences between us. So obviously you've got one that's very good for centralized, you've got one that's secured through distributed ledgers, Control's in the hands of others. That's obviously the big thing for crypto. We kind of summarize it down to the blockchain. You know, people say, what's the point of the blockchain, Josh? And in a nutshell, if I had to summarize it in one sentence, what we've been able to do so well is we've digitized and mathematicized human trust, which is kind of a big thing. We've removed the humans from the trust elements. We now no longer need to trust third parties, third entities, and that's what makes it very special between two parties that want to communicate information, not necessarily just finance. So these are some uses of blockchain. So some of these may or may not be familiar to you. We've got instantaneous insurance payouts. That's currently live and working very well as we speak. We've got storage of data records for medical records, which is really interesting. Another local Manchester-based firm's doing that. And supply chain traceability. So yeah, so Fizzy. So there's a company out there at the moment called Fizz Wealth. It's called AXA Insurance. I'm sure we've all heard of those. They've got a product live on the market today called Fizzy. And the point of Fizzy is very simple. If you've ever been on holiday and you've taken your family or your friends away and fundamentally you've not been able to get the flight on time, maybe you've got flight compensation insurance. So you miss your flight, you want your money back. What's the process? Call them up, email, haggle on the phone, blah, 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 blah. Maybe if you're lucky 6 weeks later, you get a check in the post. It's a nightmare for you, it's a nightmare for them. There's a lot of cost involved in the middle, not the optimum solution. Thankfully, through the Ethereum smart contract network, as it happens, Fizzy is a live protocol in which the second the plane's wheels don't leave on time, you instantaneously get paid. Great example of using the blockchain. That's a live product that we can use today. So, health, of course, so medical records is again something that people don't really realize is going to be a great use for this. So obviously I'm a local boy, I'm in Manchester. Typically when I'm doing this talk, I'm all around the world, all around the country. If I was to have a horrible accident somewhere and needed some blood, someone has to physically go and check with my local NHS authority what my blood group is before they can issue that. Whereas once everything's going to be on the blockchain, we'll not only be able to have access to different data points around the world, but we'll fundamentally own our own data, which is another really big concept moving forward in this space, to be able to own your own data. So then, of course, this is what is crypto. Now, this is, you know, hopefully, I'm sure a lot of you in this room really understand this quite well. But actually, when we explain this to people, it raises a few questions that they've never really heard of before. So how we explain it is we actually say cryptocurrency is a rubbish name. It shouldn't really be called cryptocurrency. It's called cryptocurrency because obviously Bitcoin was the first, and Bitcoin is a form of digital currency. Everything else has kind of inherited that name without really needing to. It should really be called something akin to crypto shares or crypto tokens or something along that would be a more suitable name really. Because only a handful of coins, at the moment there's about 2,127 coins-ish on the market. Only about 30 to 50 of those are actively trying to be forms of payment, actively trying to be cryptocurrencies. Of course, you know, you've got the ones that we know, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash, the familiar things, but there's a lot of coins in the ecosystem. You know, Ethereum, by definition, is not trying to be a cryptocurrency. It's a platform in which other things are built on top of for lots of other business protocols. So the term confuses people because to the average person, you then get, well, why the hell is there 2,000 cryptocurrencies? That's stupid. It's not a term which is helpful in pushing the space forward, so we try to make this separation. So this is how we explain it to people. We try to use language that is familiar to them to help kind of make the point. So what we say is the blockchain, imagine it for a second a little bit like the internet. So if we say the internet is the cool, underlying, awesome technology that businesses use to sit on top of. So you've got things like your Facebook and your Googles and your Amazons. None of us in this room would say Facebook is the internet or eBay is the internet. That wouldn't be a statement we'd make. We understand that they just use the internet. Similarly, that really is what the blockchain is. And this is how we like to separate it for people. So the blockchain is the cool underlying technology, and all these crypto tokens are just businesses that use that mechanism, use the underlying technology for their own purpose. So you've got things on there, you know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron, Ravencoin, Retool Coin, Snowgem, and all the other hundreds of that are out there. And that's the difference. So this is kind of where people can get a little bit twisted. So it's quite easy to explain that separation. So fundamentally, of course, how can you spend cryptocurrency? So moving back to the money section, people often have this misconception that you can't actually spend money. People buy cars in Bitcoin. You can obviously trade it for cash. We're well aware of this now. We've got Bitcoin ATMs right here in Manchester city centre. Of course, saving on international monetary transfers. There's lots of platforms now that are designed to facilitate that mechanism. And of course, there's prepaid top-up cards now, things such as WireX, where you can just go and buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin if you so wish to do so. So the entire ecosystem now really exists, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, again here, there's a bar in Manchester, just around the corner from us actually, called Sandbar. It only accepts contactless payments and crypto. So if you want to go and buy some drinks later, there's a bar around the corner that literally accepts Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is pretty cool. One of the first bars, so we did some work with them to help them implement some things there and add some chats, and we try to host some meetings there when we can, so if anyone's local, you're more than welcome to come along to those things. Lots of branches of Lamborghini accept Bitcoin as payment. So you're all familiar with Bitcoin Lambos. And interestingly, there's a tweet, which I should have put in this slide deck, to be honest. When Bitcoin hit 10 grand, first time round, before it hit 20, you can find the tweet. Lamborghini actually put a tweet out saying, "Sorry Europe, all sold out, #Bitcoin." Lamborghini sold more cars in that weekend than they'd ever sold before, because everyone was like, when Bitcoin hits 10 grand, we're going to get some Lambos, and so they did. So that's an interesting thing there. There's some parts of the Microsoft ecosystem that you can still accept Bitcoin, and Overstock as well. Overstock's becoming a really interesting company in this space. For those of us in the UK, as we are, Overstock is kind of a little bit like an MFI or a Homebase in America. It's kind of a big furniture and hardware store, and they're one of the largest retail spaces that fully accept crypto for all their services, which is really cool. So what then is the future looking like? This is probably, I've kind of put this in because I realized I was speaking a bit earlier in the week, and hopefully some of you are here for a few days. It might set the scene a little bit. So Fidelity Investments, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Fidelity, a massive global kind of hedge fund management system in America. They're huge investors. Only recently they've released their digital asset platform, in which institutions are soon going to be able to move into the space. Because interestingly, for those of you that do maybe don't know, as it stands today, right now today, it is illegal for regulated funds to be entered into the non-regulated space, aka Bitcoin. So you cannot have your hedge funds, pensions, investment funds moving money into that space as of yet, hence why there's so much work being done in America to get the SEC to verify things, which is looking like they've now delayed that to the final time, and it's ultimately looking probably May to June they're going to make an official decision, which is inevitably going to go through. So Fidelity has kind of got their ducks in order for that process and released a digital asset platform. Of course, those of you that know the new Samsung phone that comes out this month, the S10, has inbuilt hardware wallets for crypto. Pretty big deal, because it means every single phone moving forward in the Samsung range is going to have an inbuilt hardware wallet. Kind of nice for adoption. Of course, JP Morgan coin, if you follow our Facebook, Easy Crypto on Facebook, we did some big videos about this, the implications for Facebook, for JP Morgan having their own coin. And fundamentally what that means, it's not a publicly traded coin on the market, so you won't find it on CoinMarketCap, but it's fundamentally designed to settle international payments between different JP Morgan accounts, avoiding international exchange fees and all the logistics and problems in the middle. So that's cool because it's a bank that's now got its own crypto. And a lot of banks are using crypto. Santander uses Ripple for international monetary payments. JP Morgan's now got its own coin. What you have to understand is the deeper you get into this space, you realize that whatever is being said publicly about crypto, behind closed doors, all the big boys are involved in this deeper than you can possibly imagine, because fundamentally the power of blockchain is just too powerful for them to stop and watch this go by. So again, Nasdaq have got involved and released an official statement about moving things on the blockchain. Digital asset transfer tokens. So what we're going to have very shortly is, at the moment we have a stock market and a stock exchange. Within the next 20-year period, that will completely change, and we'll have a fractional digitized asset transfer market where you will have a crypto token or a crypto share of a company in a fractional digitalized blockchain fashion. So ultimately, there's a company called ICE, which is the Intercontinental Exchanges. They're the parent company of things like the New York and London Stock Exchange. Very few people realize they're actually privately owned companies. They've released a company called Bakkt, which you've probably heard a lot of news about in regards to getting this SEC approval. And that will be the mechanism for the first constitutional investment for the corporate space. So there's some really great headlines moving in that way. So to kind of give you some numbers there, the reason why they decided to do that, or one of the reasons I believe, was thanks to our friend who set up Binance. So to give you some kind of rough overview, I think Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in Germany. Forgive me if these figures are somewhat a little bit out, but roughly speaking, it illustrates the point, is I think Deutsche Bank has about 112,000 members of staff across the world. It's about 170, 180-year-old company, and in the first quarter of last year, it made $74 million profit. Binance, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, run by a 29-year-old Chinese kid. The company's existed 3.5 years. At the time where the numbers came from, there was 64 staff, made in that first quarter $278 million. So you can imagine how much money is kind of sloshing in this sector moving forward, hence Binance Coin being quite a nice thing, as we've seen in the last few months. And the big institutions are now moving into this space because that's where the market's going to be. So this is kind of the crux of what I wanted to get through, so fly through that quite quick. What the heck then is crypto mining? How does it work? How can I earn some money? What's in it for me? What's it all about? So let's get stuck right in. So crypto mining is very, very simple. People overcomplicate it. Effectively, you're being paid to voluntarily power the blockchain network and to verify transactions. So everyone kind of thinks this is some wild concept. The amount of times people say to me, but Josh, you can't just have a machine that you turn on and it pays you every day. That's crazy. Well, no. Welcome to 2019. And everyone does this already. This is a thing that's crazy. So how many of you, just for interest, how many of you in this room have a website? Your own website of some description? So plenty of hands going up in the room. So why, every month, do you pay a web hosting fee? You're paying a computer to perform a service of keeping your website online. So who's making money? The person that owns that computer. Mining on the blockchain is no different. You own a computer, it provides computer power, and someone pays you for that service. It's dead straightforward. We've been doing it for 20 years. But fundamentally, people think that it's something crazy and different and new, and it's not. It's just a really simple way of moving things, because in 2019, companies don't want centralized infrastructure. If you're familiar with like the Amazon web servers, they've got football fields and football fields full of computers. It costs them hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year to do all of that. Ultimately, with mining rigs all over the world, people can just jump in on that power straight away and take as much or as little as they need with very little infrastructure cost. So this little diagram is something we've knocked together to kind of demonstrate that point. So you'll have something like a mining rig. We've got one in the exhibition hall next to us over here, so you can come and have a look and meet the team. Processing power is supplied to the blockchain, and for any coins to move around, so let's, for example, say someone wants to send some Ethereum from one person to another, or some Raven coin from one person to another, ultimately the machine spins up, does lots of its computational stuff, and says, I'm real, you're real, money's moved from A to B, thank you very much, and as a thank you, earns a fragment of reward for that transaction. It's not much more complicated than that. So effectively, you get a computer, you turn it on, you leave it running 24 hours a day, and it just does its thing, helping the transactions and the market move forward. It's not quite as complex as people think. So this proof of work versus proof of stake thing comes up a lot in this sector. So for those of you that don't know the difference, kind of POW is called proof of work. So that is effectively crypto mining. The proof of work, so the machines are physically working and proving that something has been done. That's proof of work. And proof of stake is effectively saying, in a nutshell, in a simple fashion, these coins are real, therefore we have authority to verify future transactions. So both of them have intrinsic advantages. There's some disadvantages on both sides as well. As we've kind of got the list above. Now there's a big kind of ongoing debate, because what we often get is, oh, but crypto mining's so bad, it uses loads of power and it's really bad and it's just not a great way to move forward. But the reality of it is it's one of the most secure networks that we've ever created. And of course it uses a lot of power now. But the reality of it is it's just nowhere near as impactful as people think. I've never heard the argument say, oh, crypto mining uses loads of power. Well, I'm like, well, yeah, but you don't complain about your trees being chopped down because you're using cash. It's a much more nuanced argument than people realize. And actually now, for all we're ripping off the kind of plaster, if we kind of look at all the implementations that blockchain will have, and particularly proof of work applications, the user end. So things like that Fizzy example, where now we're using the Ethereum network, which is powered by mining, to kind of move that along. All of the kind of CO2 and green energy kind of stuff, we're going to have a much better positive net effect thanks to the technology infrastructure that we're building than any damage that we do through the mining process. And it's a really interesting argument kind of moving forward. So I don't expect a lot of you to be aware of this, but actually in the UK, the government at the moment has just removed feed-in tariffs. So if you had solar panels, wind turbines, all that type of stuff, historically speaking, you used to get paid per pence of kilowatt that you generated. From this month, from the last 30th of March, now it's April, they've completely removed that. So as it stands today, there is zero financial incentive in the UK for buying new renewable energy equipment. You do not get paid anymore, which is crazy. So for all the governments say that they want to save the world on renewable energy, they ain't prepared to pay for it. So now one of the big customer segments which we actually work with is the renewable energy sector. So instead of all that electric being produced and now not being monetized, or the existing people that were at 4, 5, 6 pence a kilowatt, we're now able to say, hey, instead of selling that power, crypto mine on it, and you can actually earn 40, 50, 60 pence a kilowatt. Completely changes the revenue structures for the renewable energy sector. So, you know, we've got meetings with some very, very serious players in the UK only this week, actually. And it's my goal that if I can create a new financial mechanism moving forward, helps blockchain, helps crypto, and improves the renewable energy sector in the UK, I'll take that. That's a great thing to be involved in. So the argument is much more nuanced in reality, and people aren't necessarily always aware of the facts. So mining misconceptions, let's kind of bust some myths, because this is what we get all the time. So, oh, it uses so much electric, you can't make money mining. That is absolutely categorically true if you're mining Bitcoin in the UK. We do not mine Bitcoin. We have never mined Bitcoin. I have no intention of mining Bitcoin. It's just not the most profitable thing to do because, as we all know, any crypto coin in the ecosystem is interchangeable through exchanges. So why the heck am I going to work really hard to mine £1 of Bitcoin when I can work a teeny little bit and get £10 of another coin and then, hey, swap it for £10 of Bitcoin? Easy. So I'm not concerned about Bitcoin. I'm not concerned about ASIC machines. We'll get onto those shortly. But fundamentally, one of our units uses 1100 watts of power, 1150 watts of power. A hairdryer, as you can see, as we'll get on the next slide, uses much more. So these are the questions we're going to bust. So it uses too much electric. We'll break that down. Mining's way too technical. I'm not a coder, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a geek, I don't know how to do this. I own one of the companies, well, one of the largest companies in the UK doing this now. I cannot write a line of code. Not a clue. I'm not a geek. And 18 months ago, I did not have a clue. Well, longer than that now, but it's very, very simple stuff. You can't compete with the factories in China. If everyone goes on YouTube and sees these big mining facilities and there's all these warehouses, you're thinking, oh, well, how the heck can little old me have any type of say in this sector now? I've missed the boat. Absolutely not true at all. And this is a question we get all the time. Oh, so what's the hash rate of your rig? If anyone asks you that, it's a really dumb question, but they don't realize it's a dumb question. So the problem is with that, as we'll get into in a minute, it's a much more, again, complex question. So yeah, it uses too much electric. So we've got about 1100 watts of power on one of our units. Just to break that down for you, that's six 2080 graphics cards, the most powerful cards on the planet. And what we do, which is very clever, is we actually run some specialist software to undervolt the cards and to overclock them. So a little bit like tuning an engine. So a typical card will run at 250 watts. We can run it on full power at 160 watts and get an extra 20 to 30% performance out of it. Winner. Extends the life of the card, reduces the heat output, everything's lovely jubbly, increases your ROI. So that's all something we're able to do. So not even got as much on as a hairdryer. Now, yes, they're on 24 hours a day. Yes, in the UK at 13 pence a kilowatt, you're probably looking at around 70 to 80 pounds a month in electric. No problem. But if your machine's making more money than that, whoop-de-doo, all good to go. So, mining's way too technical. So again, you think, you know, how do I mine this coin or that coin, or do I need mining pools, or do I need this algorithm or that code? There are softwares out there now, and people like ourselves that respect that most people don't understand this stuff, and there are fully managed services. And even if you do it yourself, which we educate people to do, it's literally copy and paste. If you can copy and paste stuff, you're good to go. All you need to know is what bit is which, copy, paste, done, off it goes. So it's really not anything more complex than people realize, not too much at all. So You can't compete with the factories in China. So again, whenever you see these big warehouses, you can virtually guarantee they're all mining Bitcoin. And fundamentally, you don't need to compete with them because you're fundamentally not mining Bitcoin. And that's the big difference that people don't realize. Generally, when people think of mining, they think of, they think of Bitcoin or they think of Ethereum. And actually, those were the big coins to be mining a while ago, but the market's moved very substantially in the past 2 years. And ultimately, the money's to be made in the other coins. So this is kind of ASIC versus GPU, another big debate in the space as to kind of what's good versus what's bad. So on the left here, we've got an ASIC machine, so you're very familiar with those. You know, people like Bitmain have made them in the millions around the world. And effectively, the difference is something like what we make on the right there. It's a totally different value proposition, totally different kettle of fish. And this, sometimes people don't appreciate the differences and why the value propositions between them are so different. So an ASIC machine, in a nutshell, is a specifically manufactured bit of kit that's designed to do one thing and one thing only. It just mines one coin. And it's very, very, very good at doing that. But the problem is that because it's just a specially made chip, people are very clever and they make a better specialized chip 6 months later. And subsequently, for those of you that have been following the story, you know, Bitmain are now on the T15, S15. We've had so many different versions of those miners. So before we had, the big Bitcoin miner of the last 2 years has been the S9, which was the best of its generation. That's where the majority of these warehouses now sit full of this equipment. No one's talking about the S6s, S7s, or S8s. Because they had a very, very short life cycle because they were completely iterating. And the reason why the S9 stayed around for so long was because we were moving from a 12 nanometer chip to a 7 nanometer chip. Now we've got the 7 nanometer chips, we've already seen 3 new versions of Bitmain equipment. So anyone that's bought loads of stuff on this, you know, you might be doing okay for a few months, then a new machine comes out and you know, because if you're on the Bitcoin network, everyone's competing against each other and it can be an uphill horsepower battle. So it's not that ASIC machines are bad in concept, it's just that the technology moves so fast, it's a very difficult value proposition for any type of investors or customers. You have to be at a huge scale for that to kind of make good commercial sense to do. Whereas the GPU on the other side, it's effectively just a normal supercomputer. I say normal, it's made of individual computer graphics cards, which completely separate from the crypto space, retain an awful lot of value. So you could literally unscrew a component, whack it back in its box, sell it on eBay, and you get your money back quite nicely, which is a very different approach. So fundamentally, there's a big difference in technology jump as well. So every couple of months, there might be a new ASIC machine. With GPU equipment, there's typically a 3-year life cycle because they're all manufactured by either NVIDIA or AMD. We specialize in NVIDIA because it's much more powerful. So fundamentally, the difference isn't that big. So now we've moved to the 2080 generation of cards. The last 3 years has been the 1080 Ti's. The difference in power between those two generations is only 15%. So what you end up with is those older products are still making profit, still doing great, but if you were to sell them, they've lost maybe 15 to 20% of their retail value. So it's a product which has a completely different value proposition, which is very, very nice. So the difference core with GPU and ASIC is that a GPU is the Swiss Army knife of the mining world. It can mine any blockchain and can power any GPU mineable coin. So at time of kind of putting this together, there's over 850 mineable coins in the ecosystem. So you've got ultimate flexibility. So the value proposition isn't, okay, let's buy a Bitcoin machine and mine Bitcoin. The value proposition is then, I believe that the blockchain space is moving forward, so I'm going to buy the most flexible, powerful bit of kit that can mine anything in that space. And in 6 months' time, the reality of it is you'll be mining a coin that doesn't even exist yet. Cool. But as long as you're able to financially mechanize that, then everyone's happy and it moves forward very nicely. So they're the kind of overviews of the differences. So again, this brings us to the next question. So what then is the hash rate of our rigs? This is kind of one of those questions that is unfortunately an overhang. The same way cryptocurrencies is an overhang of all the coins, they should really be called crypto tokens because of Bitcoin. What hash rate is your rig is an overhang from everyone mining Ethereum, where the hash rate of Ethereum was the default number that everything was compared against. Now, the honest question should be, what is the hash rate of your rig for X algorithm? There's actually over 30 different mineable GPU algorithms, and the same bit of kit would have 30 different answers to that question, depending upon which algorithm you were talking about. So again, it's just an education piece where a lot of people are still thinking a few years ago in terms of Ethereum. and what actually now is out there. So depending upon which algorithm you are mining, you could then compare hash rate directly. So it's just one of those things. So we've got 20 on there, 30, there's over 850 coins now rather than 6. And that's the kind of thing to do. And again, now this is kind of where we get to the exciting stuff. You know, how do we make money and what do we do? Now, just to kind of caveat this before we start moving into the numbers, before my lawyer kind of kicks me off stage, obviously everything that we show you is historical earnings. We cannot guarantee any numbers moving forward. This is crypto. We all know exactly what space we're in. It's extremely volatile. But any numbers that we do quote only take into consideration the first approach. So I'll explain that now in a bit more detail for you. The first approach is kind of, let's just be mean about it and say the idiot's approach. You've got some equipment, you've turned it on, you've mined in one coin, and you've just left it for 12 months. And then you've sold the bag of coins at the end of 12 months. Dead straightforward. So that's the kind of first thing that you can do. So the first thing that you can do there is you can mine today's most profitable coin. So there are online calculators, something like whattomine.com, where you can literally go online and you can see, oh, I've got this much power. What's the best coin to mine to make the most pounds per day? Easy peasy, you can do that. It's always worth bearing in mind those calculators take the out-of-the-box numbers rather than any specialist overclocking or undervolting stuff, so there's always a bit of extra overhead on those numbers. But fundamentally, you can do that quite simply and go, you know what, today's most profitable coin is this, I'm going to mine this. Now, obviously, we're all aware the market's been pretty stagnant for the past year, quite frankly, other than moving down. But fundamentally, the amount of coins that you mine, it's again not as complex as people think. Yes, there are 850 mineable coins, but if you're ultimately concerned about the best ROI, you're concerned with mining the most profitable coin. We've maybe mined 4 or 5 different coins the entire year. So it's not something that you need to sit over going, oh, I need to mine this now and micromanage it. I mean, ultimately, it's quite literally a passive income device where it sits and just earns crypto actively, which is really quite nice. So that's the first thing that you can do. The second thing that you can do is mine brand new coins as soon as they come out. So a lot of you, know that as soon as a new GPU coin comes out, when the difficulty of that coin is low. So for those of you that don't quite understand that, effectively now Bitcoin, let's use that as an example, is 10 years in. It's very, very hard to get your hands on some Bitcoin. If we went back a few years ago, we could have literally left our laptops on overnight and woke up with Bitcoin. Now you'd need warehouses of ASIC machines to wake up with 1 Bitcoin in a 24-hour period. So fundamentally, it's got more difficult to get your hands on that. Similarly, all of the mineable coins follow that lineage, but now we're much earlier in those stages, such as something like Raven Coin, which is a coin we're going to talk about a lot today. It's a coin I'm very passionate about, and it's a great, great project and has made our clients lots of money this year. Fundamentally, that's a newer coin that only started last January. So it's virtually only 13, 14 months old. So obviously when those coins come out, new coins come out all the time. We'll talk about Grin, Beam Coin. These are all coins that have recently just come out. And when those coins come out, they require mining power to kind of help them get off. The difficulty is very low and you're able to gather an incredible amount of those coins very quickly. Might not be worth a lot right at that time, but as things move forward, that can be worth some really nice returns. So the third thing that you can do as well, this is again where some people don't realize what the options are, is you can actually change which pool you decide to mine in. So we'll go through that as well. And then the fourth thing that you can do, which is now becoming a really, really big space for the sector, is effectively rent out your rig to the commercial sector, because it turns out graphics cards, the devices which we use for mining, are the most powerful bits of kit on the market for AI deep learning, graphical rendering, deep computational data, number crunching. So it turns out there's a lot of people that want to use that power, and you can get paid for doing that as well, which is quite cool. So we can kind of break that down. So again, this is kind of where the most profitable coin per day comes in. So this would be a little screenshot of whattomine.com. Fundamentally, you can see all the different algorithms there, hence referring back to that question previously. So this is just kind of leaving it on, this is the approach that 99% of people do. They just go, today's most profitable coin is this, I'm going to put my machine on that, stick it on that, set, forget, wash your hands with it, no problem. That's again where our numbers have been based on for today's talk. So 4 new ways to earn crypto. The second approach in that respect is mining brand new small coins. So as you can see, Raven Coin is again something we'll talk about a little bit more today. When that came out as a new project, one of our machines, so to put it in perspective, today Raven Coin's gone mad the last few weeks. It's done a huge increase in value. It's actually been one of the highest tracked coins versus Satoshi value this year. It's a bit of a quiet gem in the sector, not a lot of people know about, but it's done extremely well in the last year. Today, you might be getting anything from 150 to 200 Raven coins a day on one of our bits of equipment. The difficulty's increased substantially this year. If you were to mine Raven coin in the first month that it came out, only last January, or even February, the numbers are the same. So even last February, so pretty much 13 months ago in the UK, one machine was making over 20,000 Raven coin a day. So to put that into perspective today, in today's value, given the market's taken a nice little tick, but generally speaking, we're still at pretty poor prices, that would have made you over £1,000 profit per day mining in the UK within the last 13 months. Now, this isn't just a one-off example, this happens all the time. Only a few months ago, a new coin came out called Grin, we'll talk about that shortly. Again, because we mined a brand new coin there, when it first came out, our machines were making about £80 a day on that day itself, not in a year's time when it had picked up in price, but right there, right then, because it was a new project that you got a lot of coins for very quickly. So you can always mine brand new coins. It's a higher risk strategy because you don't know if they're going to be good. We advise our clients, some of our clients have quite a lot of bits of equipment. Fundamentally what we say is, hey, well, why don't you have some doing this, some doing that, some doing the other? Spread your average of risk, no problem. Sometimes our clients get a bit more into it and say in 12 weeks they'll mine 12 new coins, one a week. They know that 10 of them are going to be rubbish and never make it. But with those type of returns as a possibility, it's a risk that some people like to take. So the third thing that we can do is exploring different mining pools. So this is a really interesting thing that not a lot of people realize, that you can actually use if I have a bit of kit, if I have one of my machines and you have one of your machines, we can be mining the same coin on the same day at the same time, but both earn different amounts of money. Now, how is that possible? Well, effectively, because it depends upon which pool you decide to mine in. So let's explain this to kind of break it down for you. So we'll use the two extreme examples to illustrate this. On one extreme, imagine, for the sake of argument, a mine shaft and people's looking for a bit of gold. One of these mine shafts is a team of you. There's a team of 100 miners, and there's 100 guys and girls down there with pickaxes trying to find this bit of gold. They'll find it pretty quickly, but they'll split that equally across 100 people. Small amount each, but they'll find it very quick. On the other extreme, you can have something called solo mining, where it's just one guy going down that mine shaft looking for that bit of gold. And it might take him ages to be able to do that, but when he does, that's a huge amount of reward for him. So between these two approaches, you can actually move your device and slide it between the two. And you can actually work out the numbers as to statistically which is the best thing to be able to do. So particularly on the smaller coins, if you've got a bit of equipment or very powerful equipment, it can be dramatically more profitable to mine the blocks of coins rather than the fragments of coins. So for example, Raven coin has a 1-minute block time and there's over 5,000 coins produced a minute. So instead of going, okay, well, I'll leave my machine on with a big team and maybe get 200 coins a day, actually I've got 1% of global mining power, so I'd rather chase the blocks and hunt the 5,000 chunks of coins. Again, that 20,000 number that we gave you was just joining a big team. If you ended up solo mining Raven at that point in time, you don't want to know what the numbers were. It gets a bit silly. So that's the kind of third thing. So again, you've got flexibility of what to do. Again, we advise all our clients on that. Typically, most people just go for the biggest pool, but it's much more flexible than people realize. So the fourth thing that you can do, which is kind of really where the space is moving, is the ability to be able to use your machine and rent it out to commercial institutions. So effectively, because it's made of graphics cards, turns out they're really good at rendering graphics. So I believe, again, the exact numbers fail me, but roughly speaking, I believe Avatar, the film, the big blue guys, the film that we all really like, I think it took around 7 years to make in total. And I believe somewhere along the lines of 2 years of that 7 was just finally rendering all the time that was spent rendering the final movie, because it was one of the highest detailed visual productions we'd ever made. Now, we've got things now where we've got a blockchain system where we've got all these thousands of graphics cards all around the world, and we can effectively rent out that power to do these types of tasks on a large commercial scale. So we've got things like Render Token that are specialized for that. We also have, this is again the example of Avatar there. And we've got other things like a Deep Brain coin as well. So for AI learning and commercial task iteration, you can use your mining rig to do large deep commercial, deep compute tasks and get paid for that moving forward. So I very much believe that within the next, probably quite short time period, 2 to 5 years, we're going to be mining Disney coin, Pixar coin, and rendering the next big Marvel blockbuster movie, because it will save those companies potentially hundreds of millions of pounds of physical infrastructure costs when all this is going to be distributed. So we're moving now to this world of distributed power where everyone can play a spot in that, and there's another way to earn money from these types of devices, totally separate from the cryptocurrency market, which is quite cool. So again, Ravencoin, we absolutely love Ravencoin. It's a really great thing for us to be able to kind of have. What is Ravencoin and why is it such a good project? Ravencoin is a digital asset transfer token. So to kind of put that in a nutshell, say for example, you have a business and you want to float that business on the stock market or stock exchange. It actually costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to be able to do that. It's a big laborious process to do. Ravencoin is a digital asset transfer mechanism. So what we might be able to have very shortly in the future is a way for businesses to be able to fragmentize their assets of their company, and to have digital stock transfers, unique product ID numbers, and you can create your own digital asset in the Ravencoin ecosystem, and it can be a physical representation of something real. So you could make a Josh's car token and then give that to someone, and that could be ownership of a vehicle. So it's a really cool protocol that's moving very nicely. One of the reasons why it's done so well is because it ticks all the boxes in the crypto space. There's no pre-mine, there's no official development team, it's totally open source, it's free for everyone to develop on, and they actually created a new algorithm. So there's all those algorithms that we were talking about before, there's about 20, 30 core algorithms. Raven created a new algorithm called X16R, which basically took the top 16 algorithms and automatically rotated them to be completely ASIC resistant, so a machine couldn't be made specifically to do what Ravencoin does, again, with the ethos of making this for everyone to get involved in, which is really cool. So Raven did so well. There's been another little fork off Raven actually. This is a very, very tiny brand new project. So if you wanted to mine like a brand new coin right now, something like Retool Coin might be quite advisable. It's effectively following the success of Raven and does a slightly different thing, but on the same protocol. So that's a brand new teeny tiny coin that's come out at the moment. You can pretty much still solo mine that, which is great. And we also have like new algorithms coming on board. So Mimblewimble is a new really cool algorithm that's come out. Effectively, it's a lightweight mining algorithm, and in really simple terms, without being too technical, it does something really cool with the transactional mechanism, where by the mining process, it deletes the previous transaction. So imagine it a little bit like Monero on steroids. It's going to be, so things like Grin coin is a totally anonymous transaction coin. Can't be selling rigs right now, I'm busy, sorry. So fundamentally what we need to do is just explain these things moving forward. So we have things like Beam coin, again, it's another type of payment coin and just different services in the sector. And again, so people kind of think, so we've kind of not talked about Ethereum a lot, we've boo-hooed it a little bit. Not that I don't think it's a great project, we're actually working with some of the developers at the moment to continue to move that forward. But one of the big things that people aren't aware of is at the moment, the reason why Ethereum's become a bit of a rubbish coin to mine is because people, aka Bitmain, have decided, well, they've figured out a way to make an ASIC machine for Ethereum. It was never meant to be an ASIC coin, it was always meant to be GPU. That's how the community built it, that's why there's a big community around it. And fundamentally, we made ASIC machines for that, which have increased the difficulty like crazy, made it not profitable for the average person, and now we do have warehouses full of stuff mining Ethereum, which isn't really a great thing to be doing. But thankfully, the Ethereum developers back in, I think it was February now, officially agreed to change the algorithm. And we're going to be moving to something called progressive proof of work, a new mining algorithm that's being created. And effectively what that's going to do is remove all the ASIC machines overnight, straight away, reducing the difficulty back down to respectable levels for people. And it will give a second wind for any GPU miners to be able to get back on the Ethereum train. So I very much expect when this goes live in the next few months for it to cause a massive resurgence back in organic crypto mining, because a lot of people have a big affinity for Ethereum. And this will kind of press the reset button moving forward for the next 18 months to 2 years, which is really exciting. So who is it for, and why the heck should I be interested in this? Why is it something that I'd even care about? So who actually does it? So these are kind of like customer segments of people that kind of do this type of stuff. So passive income lovers, I mean, who doesn't like making money in their sleep? That sounds pretty cool. So that is a real thing. Business owners, we'll get into this. It's actually one of the most efficient purchases to put through a business because it's just a computer. So you can get VAT back and put it through as a capital asset purchase and depreciate it year on year. Super duper. So that's really nice. Property investors, turns out I've been selling virtual tenants this whole time, never knew. People like to use that in various different ways. Energy producers, we spoke about a little bit briefly. Those wanting to get paid to heat and air volume. The only kind of waste products from this equipment is heat. So we're actually working with some councils and some buildings where now you're able for the first time ever to be able to get paid to heat a building or an air volume, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, we do a lot of pension diversification for some independent managers and people that want to do that too. So again, so individuals are passive income. Why would you want to earn an ROI from this stuff? Well, just because who doesn't? Any of you, without going too technical and too deep, we have a fractional reserve banking system, which may or may not have some good things attached to it. But fundamentally, at the moment, as it stands in the UK, inflation is outpacing interest. So if you have money in your bank account right now, technically speaking, you're losing money every single day, which is a strange thought for most of us to comprehend, but the cost of living is exceeding the interest in your account. So unless you're cash flowing with your savings above 4% a year, you're losing money every day. So that's why people are now looking to these more intelligent options to use the money that they've got. So business owners, again, because this is just a computer and you can use it for all sorts of commercial tasks, you can get VAT back on it, which I believe you can't do for ASIC equipment because mining itself specifically is not a VAT-able activity. But because these machines are able to be used for so many different iterations, there's that option there. Potentially, it's just a capital asset as well. So capital asset is basically just a business term for people that are buying equipment through the business to use. So you're able to reduce the cost quite nicely there, which is good. And then energy producers is the big one. So again, we're really passionate about making sure we can help move the efficient energy sector move forward. So instead of, say, having a solar panel, or if you have solar panels on your roof or a wind turbine, you might be earning 4, 5, 6, 7, if you're lucky, 8 pence a kilowatt for every kilowatt that you sell. Once we crunch the numbers backwards over the last 12 months, we've been able to produce anything from 40 to 70 pence per kilowatt for those people. So it's now creating an entirely new sector. So we're working with the anaerobic digestion section for farmers, solar, hydroelectric, wind. We keynoted at the hydroelectric conference, and I'm very passionate again about moving the renewable energy sector forward. All the figures that we show you include UK electric rates. So just because we're working in this sector does not mean you can't make money plugging it into your plug sockets at home. That's the majority of the cost base that we currently have. So again, property investors. So the UK is really screwing property investors at the moment with lots of taxes and investments and different things. And what we're finding is they have a lot of dead space or different volumes. So for example, we've just done an install in Scotland where the property investor was changing a commercial property to a residential property. The local council didn't let the basement flat be rented by a tenant because it didn't have any windows, so they couldn't monetize that space, so they had a negative cash flow on the building. All of a sudden they put in some crypto mining equipment. Turns out each rig's making more than each tenant anyway. They've now got a basement full of rigs making lots of money for them, more than the whole property, and subsequently they now use that heat volume to heat the house for free. Win. So we don't suggest for a second landlords should kick tenants out. That's not a good play. But if you, say, are doing property flips and you can't have people in the house for 4 months at a time, you can take a couple of these machines, stick them in, and the property earns money. There's loads of different things you can do with them. You can be very clever with it, but fundamentally just plug it in with an internet connection, plug socket, you're good to go. Doesn't care if you've got a messy kitchen. So yeah, people looking to get paid heat and air volume. So we're having some big open discussions with a lot of councils in the area in Greater Manchester, because a lot of councils have to have building stock for fallouts and disasters and emergencies and that type of stuff. And part of that maintenance is they have to keep the buildings heated even if there's no one in there, which is crazy. So again, this is a way for them to monetize that proposition. Sports centres, leisure centres, gyms, hotels, wherever there's big air volumes, now we're able to help add solutions in that sector. Pension diversification, again, that's a personal choice for some people and some investors. But this is really what we like to be able to do, to earn a passive income, powering the blockchain, moving forward, helping everyone own crypto, and providing all these other external add-on solutions, which is really cool. So this is the kind of crux. You all want the numbers now. So this is kind of what we get into. So I'll take my knickers off slowly and reveal the numbers. So effectively, this is what we kind of end up with. So over the past 12 months in the UK, mining with, this is one machine in your own house on UK electric domestic rates, we've seen 59% return on investment in the UK in the worst bear market, full stop, that we've ever had in crypto, which is pretty nice. So how did we get to that number? This is very simple. We're happy to give any of you this document. We've got it on the stand if you want to see the numbers and a more technical breakdown. But this is dead simple. This is one machine turned on in April, mining Raven coin the whole year, turned off in April. We've got a bag of coins and we've sold them, and then that's your number. So we've not taken the all-time high price of Raven. We've not done anything to figure on the numbers. We've been a bit undercautious with this to just keep it nice and simple. And that's kind of how it's worked. So that's kind of effectively a month-by-month breakdown, and that's the kind of number it comes out with. Great. So for anyone that thinks mining in the UK isn't profitable, I'll take that, thank you very much, considering if you got 12 to 15% in a classical investment of some capacity, you'd be doing exceptionally well. So that's a really nice figure to be able to have. Now it gets much better. What happens if you own a company? It changes the way you purchase the equipment, obviously, because your costs come down a little bit. You can get VAT back on your electric and such. And fundamentally, that brings us up to 91% return on investment, which is pretty preposterous. So we're quite happy with that. So we've been able to demonstrate that for all our customers that have been following the coins which we've mined. Again, this is just for that one approach, mining Raven for the year. In reality, you could have been a bit more technical, a bit more advanced, and increase that number a bit more. So this is just how the numbers work down. If you paid £10,000 for a single bit of kit and you got all those coins, you effectively had about 155,000 Raven coin. If you sold those at 6 cents, not at the all-time high last week of 6.7, which was quite nice, adds another, pretty much 20% to that number. You're looking at about that much return, which is where your 59% comes from. Nice and simple, easy peasy. So why the heck would you want to use a company like us? Well, because we make it simple for people. We know everyone's not crypto geniuses, and we like to make it nice and easy. So that's what we do. We've got a full tech support team. We've got Stav, who's my cameraman, who runs around after us, filming all this stuff and putting all that content out for people. And we've got the full tech support team. Everything's built in the UK, assembled in the UK, 12 months warranty. Give us a call if you've got any problems, and we like to sort everything out. So we're just desperately passionate about getting everyone in this space, because if we can power the blockchain, the more equipment out there, the better the ecosystem is, and if people can earn money in that process too, then I'm very happy providing that both time things. So you get full assistance, full support, and all that type of stuff. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a real quick run through of what's going on. I've kind of got through things a bit quicker, specifically so I could have some questions and answers at the time. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to welcome those, and hopefully I can be of some good use to you. Thank you.
Quick round of applause, Josh.